Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Morning, everybody, and welcome to Chassidus in the morning. 50 minutes to change your life. Tanu Rabanan from this Sefer, same name. Today's share is sponsored by Anonymous in honor of brachos for only revealed good and good health, and in honor of Yehudis Hecht for her birthday. Happy birthday, may Hashem bench you with only brachos and success. Ad die. And thank you to Shelby Aronson for sponsoring the microphone. And also for Shalema for Chaim David Rafael Ben Sarah, Tzion Ben Sarah, Chaim Baruch Eliezer Ben Rasa Esther, and Elka Rachel Bas Aliza. Okay, so basically we ended off last week in last class discussing how the main war that the Greeks had were against the chukim. The mitzvahs, they don't have any reasoning. And the reason why we're doing the mitzvah is because Hashem told us to. When there's a mitzvah that has some seichel, when you're doing a mitzvah that has some logic behind it, so I understand why you want to do it. You know, there's logic that makes sense. It's good. You know, it's traditional. But to do a mitzvah like Tum and Tahara, that there's no logic behind it, it's just because Hashem said it, they were totally against it. And now we're going to say in today's class, really on a deeper level, that it wasn't just the mitzvahs that are chukim, that are a decree from Hashem, that there's no logic, but even on all mitzvahs, because in all mitzvahs, ultimately, it does have this concept. Every mitzvah, essentially, that's what we're going to discuss today, how we have to appreciate when we do a mitzvah, we connect to Hashem's ratzin. And the reason why we connect to Hashem's ratzin is because it's not a logical thing, it's not a seichel thing. Sometimes Hashem gave us the ability to even have a seichel, but that's not the true reasoning behind the mitzvah. The true reason behind the mitzvah was Hashem's ratzin. It's a mile from our understanding. And yeah, and that will also let us appreciate that when we do a mitzvah, what are we doing? We're connecting to Hashem Himself. We're not making our lives better. We're also making our lives better. But what are we essentially doing? We're connecting to Hashem Himself. Any mitzvah we do, whether it's giving 5 cents to tzedakah, whether it's saying a bracha, whether it's saying Shema, whether it's having obviously so, whatever it is. And let's see. Parak Daled. In this book, it's page 273. So this above explanation that we said that it was specifically the complaint of the Greeks was about the mitzvahs that were chukim. This would be understood according to what is known in Shekam, but mitzvahs edus mishpatim, even mitzvahs like edus mishpatim, which are primarily fulfilled. You have to fulfill it in a way, the same way you feel a chayk. When you do a chayk mitzvah, like Tum and Tahara, you don't do it because it makes sense to you. You don't do it because of any logic behind it, because there is no logic behind it. You do it because it's Hashem told you to. Whereas a mitzvah, let's say, of celebrating Chanuka, you understand it. You know, that's a Rabanan. Let's say a mitzvah of Shabbos. Why? You have to remember Shabbos holy. Hashem rests on the 7th day, so we should rest on the 7th day. It makes sense to me. Celebrate Pesach. Yeah, I'm reminding myself that the Yidden left Mitzrayim. It makes sense. I'm going to celebrate this. But what we're saying is that really the reason why we do all the mitzvahs has to be not just because that's what we celebrate, that's because of what happened, because this is the Ratzon of Hashem. And this idea that even a mitzvah that has a reason, we have to fulfill it because this is Hashem's desire, Hashem's will. It's not just that the person fulfilling it has to fulfill it because this is Hashem's will. And he explains that the way you do the mitzvah is not because it makes sense to you, but because you're a servant. Hashem is your master. But and the only way to fulfill the mitzvah properly is this way, meaning because if you're doing the mitzvah just because it makes sense to you, so when it starts making sense to you, you're going to stop doing the mitzvah. It's not going to work out for you. If your Judaism is based off your own feelings for that day, so then when you have a bad day, you have a bad Judaism. You have a good day. It's like the joke people say, I feel connected in my heart. Judaism, in my heart. So the joke is, what happens if you have a heart attack? So to him, if you're doing the mitzvah because it makes sense to you, so when that logic goes, it's like there's this famous story that the student of the Ramban, he basically fried out, and he ended up becoming Christian. And so one year on Yom Kippur, he became very chashuv guy. He was very smart. He became like a minister or something. He called the Ramban from Shul on Yom Kippur, and he was cooking pork on Yom Kippur, and he ate it, and he was like, Ramban's like, what happened to you? Like, what happened? What'd you get wrong? So he said, you told me that in Parshas Azinu everything is in Parshas Azinu, and I thought about it. It doesn't make any sense. It's impossible. Parshas Azinu, just a small parsha, has everything. So the Ramban said, yeah, I don't deny this. This is true. So he said, okay, then show me where my name is. And ultimately, he says, give me a few moments. He davened to Hashem, and then he got the answer, and he found the pasuk. Every third letter in the pasuk was spelled out his name. This guy's name was Avner. But the point is, so to speak, he was doing the Torah mitzvahs based off logic, and this logic didn't work. He's like, oh, it doesn't work. Well, it's like my father told me, and I tell my kids that when you don't understand something in Torah, don't say it doesn't make sense. Say, I don't understand. And that's the same thing. Why do we do a Torah mitzvah? It's not because it makes sense to us. We do it because that's what Hashem wants us to do. And that's how we connect to Hashem. And the connection that we get to Hashem through doing a mitzvah in that way versus the connection to Hashem from logic, it separates us. There's me and there's Hashem and there's the mitzvah. Whereas when we do the mitzvah, because it's the Ras and Hashem, I'm connecting to Hashem himself. Through the mitzvah, I'm becoming one with Hashem. We're all one. Ela gam mitzad mitzvah. So that's mitzad the person, but even the mitzvah itself. Kikol mitzvahs, gam mitzvah sheish lehem ta'am, even a mitzvah that has a reason. Heim ritzonis barach. Really, what's the real reason? It's Hashem's will. It's Hashem's desire. It's a reason that's above. It's a will above reasoning, and that's a true ways connection. When you connect to someone with something that they want you to do it because the logic makes sense, versus you connect to someone because this is their will. It's a much deeper connection. It's just that Hashem decreed that the will for these mitzvahs should be included also in a reason. Meaning, there's no reason, but it happens to be in certain mitzvahs. Hashem decided that we should give a reason to this. And furthermore, the true reason for the mitzvah is even the true reason for the mitzvah we don't understand. Meaning, even in the mitzvah that has a reason that we can understand, that's not the true reason for the mitzvah. We shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking, oh, that's the reason why we do the mitzvah. That's why Hashem wants to do the mitzvah. That's not the real reason. The real reason is because it's Ras and Hashem. And the reason that Hashem has is totally above our understanding. Even in Hashem's chachma, which is the logic, so to speak, behind the mitzvah, from Hashem's perspective, he ain't safe. It's infinite. And we're finite, so we can never understand it. And specifically, Hashem and his chachma one. So it's totally above our understanding. So when we do a mitzvah, we have to do it because this is Hashem's ratzon. And we have to do it like a Kabbalah soul. And that's the only true way to have a connection. And even more, and together with that, we have to appreciate that the reasoning behind the mitzvah is above our understanding as well. And even though some mitzvahs have an understanding, that's not the true understanding. Really, the true mitzvah is Ein Sof. It's connected one with Hashem. So it's impossible that a limited being, a limited creation, we limited beings to understand the true reasoning behind the mitzvah. Like it says in the Kodesh, like the Alter writes, that the reasoning for a mitzvah haven't been revealed. It's above our understanding, our ability to understand. And even in a case that there is an explanation that's given to a mitzvah that seemingly is understandable for us, this reasoning that's understood to us, it's not the true reasoning. And this idea that it's not the true reasoning, this is also very practical, very logical, very simplistically. You don't have to be such a genius to understand this. Gam seichel nushi, maybe even a normal person can understand very simply that a limited mind. We can't understand Hashem's wisdom, Hashem's will, Hashem's, it's impossible to understand that. Ability mugbal, it's unlimited, and we're limited, so of course we can't understand it. But on the contrary, when it comes to a situation where you do have some understanding to it that has been given to us, that's the chiddush. Normally you think, it makes sense, I should understand it. But he's saying, no, that doesn't make any sense. The fact that you understand it is the chiddush. This is only a kindness from Hashem. That we, our limited minds, will be able to understand some of this. And even after the fact that he gives us a reason that we can understand, this reasoning is only in the general mitzvah, but not in the details, because the whole dimension of it and why it has to be specifically 4 amos and not 5 amos, it wants to be this way and that way. All these details are totally above our understanding. So what is this teaching us? Even the mitzvahs that have logic, so to speak, quote unquote, in regards to us, really, if you want to be honest, it's a chayk. Because as we explained, this is totally above our understanding, the reasoning behind the mitzvah. And even more than this is Hashem's ratzon. A will, a desire is way above it. When we have a desire for something, it's not a logical thing. It doesn't come into logic. If it's not a logical thing, then you can't really come into logic. So how can we say we can truly understand it? Like it says about Hashem's desire to create the world, if in kasha nishkein, if in taiva is nishkein kasha. On a taiva, there's no questions. Meaning this is Hashem's ratzon, there's no reasoning. I want it because I want it. So it's totally above our understanding. But say no, Hashem's ratzon above his chachma. We're going to finish and then we're going to discuss about it a little bit, bring about it a little bit. So now the Rebbe is showing us now, kind of back in what's going on over here. This is the whole idea of what the Yevanim try to take us away from Hashem's ratzon. So really, the Rebbe is saying it wasn't just in the chukim. Before we learned this, it was in the chukim. That in the chayk mitzvahs, they don't have any reasoning. They didn't like it. Say you shouldn't do this chayk. You shouldn't have tuman tara, bris milah. It doesn't make any sense. Have a mitzvah that makes sense. Fine. Keep Pesach. Remember that you left Mitzrayim. That's fine. But they're saying no. That wasn't the issue. The issue was also in keeping Pesach, because the way we keep Pesach truly is not because of the fact that we remember the left Mitzrayim. It's because Hashem just told us to. And the real reason behind Pesach is totally above our understanding. They want to take away our sensitivity to Elikus. Because if you're doing a mitzvah that's only mitzad seichel, it's only just intellectual, it only makes sense to you. That's the only reason why you're doing that mitzvah, so then totally you lose God. And that's what they wanted. And that's what their problem was, that when we do a mitzvah, we ultimately realize it's not just a logic behind it, but it's totally above our understanding. And we're doing what Hashem told us to do. It's like I'll give you a simple explanation soon. That all mitzvahs, Hashem's will and Hashem's intellect, which is above our understanding. And that's why they wanted to remove us from the chukim, the statutes. They wanted to uproot. 2 things they wanted to get rid of. One is that the sensitivity to Elikus, and one that this is a mitzvah of Hashem. And it's Hashem's thing. That it's Hashem's will. Let's say necha, your will. And a simple example of this, you could say sort of, it's like, let's say, keeping Shabbos, or not having a phone on the Shabbos. It wasn't, why do you could say, I don't have my phone on Shabbos because it makes sense. What do you mean? It's good. You need to take a break from your phone, or Shemitah. 7 years is good for the fields, not to be plowed all the time. And you could say that's the reasoning behind the mitzvah. What we're saying is, why do we do the mitzvah Shemitah? Why do we keep Shabbos? It's because Hashem told us to. And the proof to it is that we have Shabbos. And one of the things you'll notice, if you haven't noticed already, pay attention to the fact that when Shabbos comes in and your phone's off, you're much more calm, relaxed, and your conversations on Shabbos, your Shabbos table are much better. The whole experience is amazing. But, and it makes sense. And you could say, Shabbos is great because I don't have my phone. But unfortunately, there's a Yidden that they don't like Shabbos. They don't appreciate the Shabbos. But is the reason why Shabbos is great is because I don't have my phone on? And even more, if you realize, if Hashem didn't say, you don't have your phone on Shabbos, would it be phones on? Of course there'd be phones on. Why do we do it? It's because Hashem. It's all about Hashem. And ultimately, we have to recognize that every mitzvah that we're doing is because of Hashem. We have to tap into that realization that why are we doing this? Because it makes sense, because I was brought up this way, or because I learned that this is what we do is from Jews. We do these things. We daven every day. We light Shabbos candles. We dress nicely. We eat kosher. But we have to not forget the fact that it's all because it's what Hashem wants. It's all coming back to Hashem. And when you do this, you're going in exact the opposite direction of what the Greeks were trying to do. They were trying to get rid of all those godliness from it. And this is what the war was. This is what that was totally specifically going against the oil, because the oil was showing this deep connection that we have. And that's what we're trying to get rid of. So it's a lesson for us that we should connect ourselves to the Nation Torah, to Hashem. And when we realize we're doing a mitzvah, we're not just doing a mitzvah because it makes sense to us. And even though it does make sense to us, we have to recognize that don't fool ourselves into thinking this is the only reason why we do the mitzvah. And this is the logic behind the mitzvah. The reason behind the mitzvah is because it's Hashem's desire and Hashem's intellect, which we can't understand. Yeah, and tomorrow, to be continued tomorrow. Have a great day. Okay, so a question was brought up that we say here in the end that there were sort of two things that you briefed on to do. I want to understand this more, elaborate on this. As we said, they want to get rid of the sensitivity to likus. And the second thing is so it's two things it's saying. One is a sensitivity to likus, that you recognize that this is godly, you feel it, that you have that sensitivity to it. The other one is that this is the Eibishter's. I mean, you can have the godly feeling, but it's sort of disconnected from Hashem. It feels, there's people that feel sensitivity to likus. A person go to the oil, for example, and they go then have a good experience, but it's not going to make them connect to Hashem necessarily afterwards. And so I think that's what he's saying, that there's two aspects. There's an aspect of the sensitivity of likus, that's not go to the oil and feel something. But then there's an aspect also that the mitzvah is coming from Hashem. It's a deep idea. It's a good question.